a goodie.
The Big D, WDRC, remembers the way it used to be.
And that's just one of the memories that we can't talk about actually while we're recording the program. I'm Steve Parker, back with another edition of WDRC Remembers, and that's kind of what we've been doing here from time to time is, you know, reminiscing some of the greatest stories and actually some that we can actually tell to you. But it's all about the 100th anniversary of WDRC, and there are so many great stories. Whenever we get together, we can just talk the night away. And these are real stories. People say, well, WKRP, anything like that? No, that was tame. The stuff that came out of that building, and we're going to be telling you a little about this. And here we are. Can you believe it? It's already our Christmas show. And the one thing about Christmas that was always cool was WDRC always found a way to bring the emotion of Christmas to the listeners. And I, you know, with my dad, I did a lot of the writing, you know, and here we're going to be talking about Christmas through the years and the Christmas gift. But it's all about taking feelings and bringing them out so they could touch you. So I got Dave Overson here with us. Dave was production man extraordinaire. How are you?
Good, Steve. Thanks for having me be a part of this great event.
Well, plain fact of the matter is, Dave, Dave has got enough on all of us. He used to run blooper tapes. We definitely can't play those here.
Yes.
So we definitely had to make sure that we invited Dave to do the show because he designed all of this. So you were there through a lot of the great days. What was the time period when you worked at WDRC?
Well, I did. I was started in 1970. I was just doing part-time work, and then I left DRC. And wound up going to the place across the street. Mm-hmm. And,
cemetery. Beautiful this time of year.
Yes, it's excellent. It felt like it at times, but it's like walking into a time tunnel.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot from 1080, and I stayed there until October of 1972.
You missed the fun.
Yeah, I did. I really did. And so the Wayne Mulligan had just took over as the new chief engineer, and so Wayne called me and he said, "You'd like to come here full time?" I go, "Yeah." So I worked about a year and a half as just a board op. Mm-hmm. I worked with Craig, Dick McDonough, Joe Hager, and a lot of the Jim Harrington, quite a few of those people, and then around 1973, I was promoted to production manager, mm-hmm. Production director, manager, I don't know. But anyways, my job putting the commercials together, making them work, making the contest promo. Your father would write up the contest. He would do the contest, and then I would put it all together on tape. And he'd say, "Yeah, do this, do that." The one thing that DRC had over all the stations in Hartford is we would do features, 2-minute features, 3-minute features. We did one on Elvis Presley, and we'll do a show on that, and different contests and stuff. But around Christmas time was always special, and your father wrote I think a 4-minute piece, and it was about his experience with you as mm-hmm. a child, and it was called Christmas Through the Years.
You know, a lot of these things for me often hit close to home because they were straight from his heart, and some of the things that he would write about really reflected on certain points in my life, and I don't know, there's so much here I'd like to say, so let's take a look at it. Christmas Through the Years.
You know, I haven't had a chance to tell anybody what I want for Christmas. Not that I'll get everything, but it never hurts to ask, right? So here goes nothing, or something, I hope. Age 1. First of all, I'd like a little soft toy that makes a noise, like maybe a bell or a squeak. Nothing too loud because I startle pretty easily and that makes me cry. Then everybody gets in a tizzy. Age 8. I'd like a racing car set. The kind I got last year that's up in the attic. Dad tried to put it together between Christmas and New Year's, and he got so mad he pulled the wires out. He said he'd fix it someday. But I guess he's been pretty busy. Age 10. I'd like a bike. Not with those training wheels, but one with a real gear shift and big handlebars. Mom doesn't think I can reach the pedals, but she's crazy. I tried Timmy's, and I could. At least while I'm standing up. Well, that's the way I ride anyhow. And if I can't get that, I'd like a spacesuit with one of those ray guns that can wipe out a whole army with one blast. Neat. Age 12. I'd like one of those heavy turtleneck sweaters and a pair of black pointed boots, the ones that come up over your ankle and have a strap. I know Dad doesn't like them, but honest, all the kids are wearing them. And if I get them, can I have those big cleats put on? Age 14. I'd like a radio. One with a plug you can put in your ear so you can walk around with it. Or one of those cameras that you can get pictures from in a minute. Oh, they're groovy. Age 16. I'd like a ring. A ruby one, or an ID. Or on second thought, no, skip it. I'd rather have the bread. I mean the money. Not a gift certificate because, well, there's this girl. And so what if I don't have a surprise to open? Well, if you insist, you can get me an album. The Beatles or the Stones, that'll be okay, but I'd rather have the money. Age 21. Oh, I won't be home for dinner this Christmas. Mary's folks asked me over because her mother can't go out this year, and she thought it'd be nice if we'd be there. Guess she's pretty sick. Age 22. I'd like to get Mary a color TV. Where'd all those other guys get the loot? Our little son Mike doesn't even know what Christmas is this year, but he tries to grab the lights off the tree. Age 30. Hey, now, Mike wants a toy that makes a noise. Or a car racing set. Or a bike, or a spacesuit, or a sweater. And black pointed boots. With cleats. All the kids are wearing them. They're, what is it? Groovy. Age 68. What do I want for Christmas? Oh, I have everything I want. Mike and Judy are coming over today. You know, it seems like a pretty short walk from those black pointed boots he wanted to a man-sized shoe. And they thought I'd be lonesome today. But now with that young Davy around, that's Mike's boy, my grandson. He's a real live one. What's he want for Christmas? But I can tell you. Well, I guess I'd better get along and get into my Sunday best. Seems like the more I sit here, the more I like it. That's the way things are now. I don't think like I used to. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to men of every age. And to the women they love.
Does it to me every time. In fact, when I play this from time to time on the radio, and if I'm on the air, I always have to intro it, and then I escape from it. I turn the headphones down, I turn everything, and I'll pick it up for the last few seconds. But it's always a real walk down memory lane to me, and there's a lot of things I could say about it. But Dave, how did you manage to pull this all together in video, which it had never been before? You talked about it for a long, long time.
Oh God, I must have talked about it from the first time I heard it back in the 70s, and I was just, I said I got to put video to this piece. But, you know, I need a control room, I need all types of equipment and facilities to do this. I don't have any of that. Thank God technology changes, and what I would need a control room to do this in, I could do this in my bedroom. So now living in Florida, I have an office area I created, and what I did was just I finally put it together, and it took me 3 weeks That means going through all the shots, thank God bless the internet, and taking royalty-free video from mostly stills and putting it together. But it was a work of love. I really enjoyed it, and I know exactly how you say you get teared up at the end, and you know, doing it for the first couple pieces, you know, yeah, I did get choked up, and then after a while, I've seen it 1,000 times. But when it's like a week went by and I had the finished product and I played it, I got teared up. I always get teared up with that, you know. Tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes with this.
Well, no, it was just it was one of those things where having grown up in that time period, a lot of the things that he was talking about were actually things that I had asked for. Starting out, you know, the race car set. I can't remember the soft squeaky toy. I go pretty far back, but the race car set. That's the first one that really hits me because he talks about how Dad had been pretty busy lately, and that was actually my mom passed away in 1964.
Yeah.
And that really a lot of the emotion there was right from the heart. And as a matter of fact, a lot of it really goes that way. And when I'm the guy that wanted the pointed boots. I had to have big cleats on them. Timmy was like my best friend, and I would always say, you know, this is, you know, I want. I drove my dad nuts, and he used to say to me, you know, Stephen, you get more if you don't ask. And then I'd always say, but how do you know what I want more of if you don't ask? If I don't ask you for it, but as that goes on and on, just the way things work out. You know, as the ID bracelet, same thing. You know, having albums or 45s were always tough because my dad worked at a radio station, so it's kind of hard for me to convince somebody that I actually bought it, especially when it said, you know, production demo all over this. But it was interesting because as I looked at it, things that I notice now that I noticed that I never would have noticed before was when he talks about his grandson Mike. Now, his grandson really is Mike, and that was all those years later. And my sister and her husband didn't come up with the name Mike because of that. So the weird coincidence is, but the thing that really hits home for me is the last age he says is 68. And he talks about, you know, feels good to sit here. I don't really think the way that I used to. 2 weeks after his 68th birthday, my dad passed away.
Wow.
So that was like almost like a premonition. Why he would end on the age 68. Why that name Mike would come up. A lot of the earlier stuff was directly from, you know, me torturing him over different things that I wanted. But it was.
Now we actually have a picture here of your father working with John Rohde, and in the background is Bertha Porter.
Yep.
She was the music director at DRC then, and this is the picture we see right here.
Yeah.
And your father, real short hair.
Yep.
And John, he's directing John Rohde. If we could see that full, Andy, and get a better shot right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
we're seeing him direct it, and it's got to be Christmas Through the Years because your father worked with him so well. And you can go back to the two-shot, Andy. One thing I noticed in that, I remember for the first time hearing him, John Rohde was phenomenal. And I don't know if, I'm sure your father coached him and directed him, but you can hear his voice getting older as the piece went through. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, it's like anything else. I mean, you know, I always say that, you know, the voice doesn't change that much through the years, but it's put like Y-ears. Because for a lot of the guys, as we found out from looking at a lot of the different videos and the interviews, they still sound the same, or they can get to that. But my dad, his voice picked up a lot of resonance as the years did go on. But the interesting thing is, he could almost adjust his writing to go along with where his voice was at. So it's kind of it was kind of interesting. And unfortunately, at the end of his life, the last 10 years or so, he had surgery with some complications. And the sad part was he had a paralyzed vocal cord, and he really lost the use of that incredible voice.
Yeah.
And his dream was to be able to retire someday and just do voice work. But every single time I hear that, I never get tired of it. But a lot of it, like you say, it's that slight aging process through the years like that, without really losing it, but that resonance is amazing.
We talked about Steve's dad's voice, Charlie Parker. Yeah, he had an extraordinary voice, very distinctive. When you heard his voice, it was either a concert ad or something out of DRC. What we want to play right now is a piece that was a Christmas piece that was not written by your dad. It was actually written by one of our on-air personalities, John Larrabee. John worked 7 to midnights. And I remember your dad calling me into his office, and he says, Dave, he says, I want you to read this. And John wrote it. And I read it, and it's a letter, an older man writing a letter to Santa Claus. And basically he's just reminiscing about his life, but asking the question, hope. What's Christmas? Is it hope? What is the true meaning of Christmas? And so your father and I were talking about this, and your father said, he says, you know who would do a great job with this? I says, who? He says, Jimmy Stewart. I could hear Jimmy, and especially when it starts off, Dear Santa Claus. I can hear that. Well, we knew we couldn't get Jimmy Stewart to do it. So I said to him, Chuck, I says, why don't you try it? He goes, really? I go, yeah. So we went into the production room. John was on the air. And your father and I, it was a little after 7 o'clock that night. I think it was a Friday night. And it was maybe a week or so just before Christmas. And I sat your father down, and he sat there, and we must have spent 2 hours in the production room just recording tracks. He must have read it about a dozen times, if not more. And I wound up using the first part of it, and I wound up using the second to the last cut and spliced it together. And then I had to go and find music for it. So I knew I didn't want a Christmas carol. I did not want a Christmas carol because we use Silent Night through Christmas through the years. I had to find something different. I wanted more commercial. So I went into my production library, and I'm flipping through albums and pulling this one out, pulling that one out, reading what's on there. And one of the albums I had pulled out was Jackie Gleason's Christmas songs. Just nothing but Christmas songs. And knowing how Jackie Gleason does his orchestra, it's very very slow, methodic. And I saw the cut Jingle Bells on it, well, I'll tell you what. Get that queued up, Andy. Let's run the Christmas gift, and we'll talk about that after.
Dear Santa Claus, I'm sorry it's been so long since I last wrote you, but you see, I thought I was too old to write you letters anymore. But Santa Claus, this year I have a lot to ask of you. Remember the year I asked you for an electric train? That was the year Dad was out of work, and we didn't have enough money for things like Christmas lights and decorations. And I guess you just couldn't find our house. Oh, I know you must have looked, Santa. I understood. Then I wrote you that letter asking you to make Mom and Dad quit fighting so they wouldn't get that divorce. I know that was a pretty big order. And I guess you must have been busy that year, huh? You know,
There was a while when I began to think that maybe reindeer really couldn't fly after all, and maybe you didn't make that magic trip around the world on Christmas Eve. I mean, Santa, that's only for kids anyway, isn't it? But you know, somehow, deep down inside, I always believed there was that magic. And maybe, just maybe, you really did live at the North Pole. And maybe I was right. There was a real Santa Claus. Oh, I hope so, Santa. Even if you didn't come to our house, you still gave me something every year. You gave me hope, Santa. And now it seems I need that more than ever. Oh, Santa Claus, so many years have gone by. So many things have changed since I last wrote you. I guess you know I don't live at my old house anymore. Maybe I should get to the point of what I'm trying to say. Last Christmas, I was awful. I was sad. You know, people should be happy on Christmas. It's a time for giving, sharing, being with people you love. But that's just what I'm trying to say. Love is best when you can give it away. What I'm trying to say is people shouldn't be alone on Christmas. And that's my big request this year. Santa Claus, I know you can do it. With the wink of, or I mean the nod of a, please forgive me, Santa. It's been so long, I forget how it goes. This year, could you stop at everybody's house or in their hearts and give them hope? Give us hope, because now I've learned. Hope isn't what's left when everything else is gone. Hope is everything. It's a precious gift. And thank you, Santa Claus.
Did it again. Just kind of always hits. Just to hear the voice. Again, this is another one when I do play it on the radio. I have to kind of turn the pots down, and you know, I'll intro it to get the feel for it, and then I'll jibber jabber or something to somebody else in the studio or whatever, and then I'm watching my clock, and I know when there's a few seconds left, I can bring it up and then do that. Because honestly, it's very difficult. I mean, I can hold it together here better than I could on the air. But wow! Amazing writing by Larrabee too. The match of Dad's voice with Larrabee's writing is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it was made in heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, Jimmy Stewart would have been interesting, but I think the father did a far better job. Far better job.
How many takes? Do you have any idea? Were you there for that one? Or?
Oh no, I recorded that. I took it right from the beginning
Yeah.
to the end. And,
did you beat him senseless like you normally did?
But what was interesting, he did the first take. I always recorded the first take.
Yep.
Because usually that's when they're very relaxed and, you know, it's all right, I'm going to see how this goes. Well, your father has some gestures, especially about the part about Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And he goes, isn't it? You know, and that was very natural.
Yeah.
And that's where I picked up, and right after that, I think it was a couple words, I made my edit, then picked the second to the last version of the piece, and I picked it up from the point where he continued, and we put it together. Now, getting back to the music, as I said, I was going through my albums, and I saw a Jackie Gleason's Christmas music, and I didn't want a Christmas Carol. I didn't, you know, I wanted something just secular, you know. And I saw Jingle Bells, and I said, you know, Jingle Bells would be really good, but, you know, because when you hear Jingle Bells, it's usually da-da-da-da-da, you know, it's a little upbeat. And when I heard it, I heard the bells and the jingle. And so then I played the track with the music at that point, and I went, this fits. Now, I did do some editing at the music towards the end, so it would begin and have an ending. And but it was made for that piece. Then your father's narration was all natural sounding, and again, a tribute to the late John Larrabee. He just he nailed it, and I never knew John being a writer like that. But see, it's stuff like that that made DRC different than other stations, because we would do stuff like this. We did one on Elvis, and there was a couple. I did one on the 4th of July, the bicentennial. It was in the bicentennial year. In fact, when your father cut that one, he had just had a heart attack. He was just recuperating from it, and he came up to the station at night. Again, we always did our stuff mostly at night.
You know? Oh yeah, that's true.
You know, and
same thing when he's writing at home.
Yeah,
you hear the language in that when it wasn't going right. There's your Merry Christmas for you.
But yeah, even the outtakes. But I don't have too many outtakes on him doing that piece.
No. This is really when he was so meticulous about his writing. When something wasn't going right, I mean, he'd do a little bit with white out, and then back then the type, the tape that you could cover it.
How would it go?
There'd usually be a couple of words with that, and then you. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, he was amazing, and your father was great for outtakes, because I got a collection of them. And
oh yeah, especially the ones that we didn't censor. Those are my favorites.
Yeah,
yes.
And we put them together and played them at Christmas time. Now we had the annual Dave Overson Christmas tape, and I put
to go along with the annual DRC party.
Yeah, and the year I did the American Top 40 Outtakes of the Week, it was a takeoff of American Top 40, and with Casey Kasem, and so I did a bad Casey Kasem, but we did it, and then we did one with Eric Gutley and Hughes Mudd with 2 Ds. John Landry worked with me on that one. John was a very creative guy. He was, and very funny, very dry humor. But that's what helped make DRC what it was, and people look forward to those. And when I left, that didn't happen. When he left, I left in 1980. He left in '83, and it's all business.
Well, even with the contests, it was always they were always unique. It wasn't like all of a sudden, no, this contest did well here, so we're going to try it here. I mean, there were just things like even the Secret Sound. That was like the first time anybody had really done Secret Sound. But through the years, other places took it on. We got the Secret Sound. But the plain fact of the matter is, that came from an interview when somebody was asking about WDRC.
Really?
And he said, well, it's not really a secret sound. And that's when he said that. That's when he came up with the contest.
Wow.
And my sister was privy to a lot of them because she would help him. Like they did one with roller skates one time and all that stuff. He'd never tell me anything.
No.
He was worried that if I got caught and tortured, I'd give. So he used to say to me, crossed candles. And all I knew was that crossed candles meant that he was in the shed, they lit the candles on fire, they crossed him, and he had to swear that he would not tell anybody. So when I'd ask you, say, crossed candles.
I put one of those together, and we would play the cut. He didn't tell me. He didn't tell anybody.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, I mean, we could go on and on about the promotions. Like, I saw the 4-page memo about the Big Birds promotion they did.
Oh, that's
and
a classic.
Around the clock, single-space memo that basically said, practically spelled out the guy's ad libs. I mean, but he was in his happiest place when he was behind the typewriter creating stuff. And he just, no matter what. I wanted to resign from the fire department. He goes, Steve, would you like him to laugh? If you want him to laugh, he was writing the resignation. You want him to cry? Because I can get him to cry. Just a resignation.
I wonder how he would have been with the computer age.
Well, the first few years when they were smashed in the driveway, he'd probably get past that. Now, it's just unfortunate because I think had he gotten to that, I can just see him like, with the phone, pulling on the iPhone and just, ripping this out and, and actually, doing contests into there, talking into it.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be, but I think it's when people talk to him like, oh, today's music, it's really lousy. Ah, what would your dad say? My dad would love it. Whatever was today's music would be what he would embrace, whether it was hip hop or anything else. Never a big fan of country, but whatever the big top 40 was.
No.
Oh, you got a country story?
Oh, God, yeah. I know it used to drive McDonough crazy. There's your father right there. Every once in a while, McDonough would be on the air, and your father come running in. He says, play this next. Dick would look at it, and he'd look at him, and he starts laughing, and he started playing it, and it was Loretta Lynn, Stand By Your Man. He played that constantly, and there's the one part where the steel guitar comes in and goes, run, and he's there, he'd be off there, and putting it, that effort into it. Song's over, he goes, that felt good. Go in, give it back to him, and off he'd go back. And McDonough would go, he says, why does he do that? Why does he do that? I said, he's the boss, He always loved it. And it's funny because he was very adamant about the fact that no one ever worked for him. They worked with him. They were all part of his team. Right.
That's what it took.
And another thing, too, is your father never was one who personally took credit.
Oh, never. Nope. No, never.
I know that people would hear stuff on the air, and they would give credit to your dad. And there's this, I guess I might as well tell this one. No, I'll tell it later.
Okay.
But it was about with Elvis Presley and Brad Davis.
Yeah,
But, yeah, your father never, he voiced a lot of stuff.
Yep.
But didn't write the copy. I did the Bicentennial piece. He wrote the copy up to a certain, but then added an ending copy that he wrote himself. The rest of it, I put it all together, and I would do things and just say, Chuck, what do you think of this? And listen to it. Oh, that's good. Well, what if you did this? Or,
Absolutely.
And,
tweak this, tweak that. Yeah.
And it's funny, when I did the Bicentennial piece, I think I originally did it for a pageant show, and the thing was like 10 minutes long. And I said, this is too long for air here. So I said, we played the original version, and he looked and he goes, yeah, it's long. And I said, I don't know what to title it. And right off the top of his head, Father goes, oh, that's simple. We'll call it 776. 776, yeah, 7 minutes, 76 seconds of America history. And
cool.
And then boom, put it together. And that was already done. All I had to do was cut some of the stuff down. I got most of the on-air talent involved in voicing certain sentences and then piece it all together, and I get moved by that. And
the thing is too, Dave, I mean, with things like that and original production pieces, or even, slug lines and slogans for the station, and how he used to, write the jingles. He'd get the music beds and he'd write the jingles to go with the music beds. But the whole thing was, whenever another station in the market would take something that he had done, whether it was a contest or whether it was a slug line or something else, never bothered him. He goes, we move on. There's no sense in trying to stand around saying, we did this first, it's ours, and all this stuff. He wasn't concerned with copywriting things. He wasn't concerned with putting his name on things. Sometimes you'll hear, talent saying it's so-and-so's such and such. Never put his name on anything. It was always about, that.
He was always giving and sharing the credit with a lot of people. I know with John Larrabee, we had all the jocks mentioned that John was still at the station at the time. This is written by John Larrabee, our 7 to Midnight guy, and then even after John left the station, we always introduced it as a piece by John Larrabee, and even when we used to air this on another station when we worked together, we always gave John Larrabee credit, because without him, this would have never happened.
Well, Dave, another great one. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And Happy New Year to you.
Yep, and I hope it's a happy, healthy one for you.
Yeah, and of course, while you're watching this, I have to admit, Don't tell this to anybody. It's probably about 85 degrees outside, and because I'll be in Florida. See? So.
Love you, Dave.
Yeah, love you too.
Thanks
Steve.
a lot, man.
Yeah. Next time on WDRC Remembers, we've got a special treat for you. But we're not going to tell you because it's a secret.
It's a secret sound.
Secret sound.
Where's that echo?
Secret sound. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Should be